My future sister-in-law caused my miscarriage, yet was still accepted. During my next pregnancy, she mocked me and ruined the joy. Let me tell you what happened, gentlemen. If not for my life, you wouldn't believe this story. Some days I feel like I'm in a Lifetime movie. Extremely dark and twisted. My ex-sister-in-law killed my first baby. Yes, you read correctly. Still, she was invited to our next pregnancy announcement. Yeah, right? Insane. Then it gets crazier because a wedding, kidnapping, and legal trouble are involved. I'm shocked to say this about my family, not how I saw my life. 5 years ago, Caleb and I went on a blind date. Isabella was hesitant about the date. You know those scary stories? I forgot my worries when I met Caleb. He made me feel like the only girl in the room with his charm and attention. He noticed how my eyes fluttered when I flirted and how my lips pouted when I liked something. I thought it was adorable and pure. I was smitten from the start and thought I would never fall. He joked that his family was insane on the date. I joked that we're all insane and didn't take it seriously. Oops. 2 years later, I was walking down the aisle to marry him. Interestingly, our first relationship issue arose on our wedding day. This was my first time meeting his brother's girlfriend, Serafina. The first time I saw her, I wore white and had professional makeup. This was after Caleb and I had uttered our vows, so I was still high on serotonin and had drunk some. I danced to Serafina to introduce myself. I wasn't going to comment about her outfit, which was near to white, because I'm non-confrontational. I moved to hug and greet her, but she pushed me away and looked disgusted. She told me I was embarrassed and didn't like attention. I kept dancing, and she told me I was glad Caleb had such low standards because if he were more like his brother Ethan, he would have slapped me for even considering him. Like what? I don't know why you'd brag about your partner hitting a woman, but I kept dancing and ignored her, which is why she did what she did. Maybe she had mental issues, but she returned a few minutes later with a glass of wine. It destroyed my wedding dress when she flung it. She then abruptly said she knew Caleb and I wanted kids and prayed I never got any. It was random. Why did she dislike me? I wanted to cry, but I didn't want to be seen or ruin my day. I gathered myself, went out back, called my friend Madeline, had her bring me a spare white dress, changed into it, and went back out into the floor to dance. Nancy's negativity wouldn't ruin my day. I didn't tell anyone what she did since I didn't want her to ruin my day. I now regret that choice. Caleb and I started trying for a baby soon after our wedding. We had always wanted one, and now that we were married, we were ready. A few months later, I was pregnant. Then calamity hit. After Serafina tripped me and I fell belly first against the stair railing, I miscarried. Ugh. Though I should have been upset, I thought it was an accident. Caleb and I hadn't told anyone since my pregnancy hadn't started showing. I now think she knew. She continued asking cryptic questions and making me drink beer. Both ways, it was heartbreaking. The worst part was that following our next doctor's appointment, they did tests and found it unlikely I'd get pregnant again. I saw Caleb cry for the first time that day. No one knew what happened, but the next time I saw Serafina, she was particularly happy and started saying things about loss and how terrible it is. Not seeing 2 and 2 is still puzzling me. She killed my baby and was so proud of herself that she joked and laughed about it to me while I had no idea. A few months later, the universe smiled down on us again, and I got pregnant again. Caleb and I cried, and he was on his knees kissing my belly. Before I knew it, he was calling in sick to work so he could take me out to eat. My baby needs food, he said. And this baby needs food too. After a few months, Caleb and I hadn't told anyone or seen anyone from either of our families, but we had something planned. With the help of my best friend Madeline, we put together a beautiful nursery for our baby daughter. After reaching the 12-week milestone, which felt like a big achievement, we decided to share our news with our families. We invited them over for an intimate dinner at our home. At dinner time, our home was filled with family warmth and chatter. Ethan and Serafina behaved like lovesick teenagers, constantly grabbing at each other, exchanging kisses and making sounds that were impossible to ignore, especially with everyone present. I felt uncomfortable, and I knew I wasn't alone. Despite this awkwardness, I was determined not to let it derail our SP. As everyone settled in for dinner, Caleb and I exchanged knowing glances, silently agreeing the time had come. We stood up, and Caleb cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. "We have something important to share with all of you," he said, excitedly. I showed everyone the ultrasound images I'd been collecting, declaring with a huge smile, "We're expecting?" After hearing what we had to say, the room went wild. Everyone jumped up and ran to embrace us, congratulate us and share in our joy. Caleb's parents, Vivian and Henry, were especially excited. This would be their first grandchild, and I could see their pride and joy in their eyes. They knew how hard we'd work. She asked, her voice choked with emotion as tears streamed down her face. I nodded, smiling through my own tears. Yes, Mom. More than okay. My brother and his wife hugged Caleb and me, celebrating our parenthood. They were eager to help and provide first-time parenting advice. I admitted to being scared and overthinking every decision. My brother assured me that he felt the same before my niece was born, and his wife nodded. At that time, only family love and support mattered. Everything was coming into place as Caleb and I realized our dreams in the company of our loved ones. Serafina stood out in the evening because she remained motionless in her chair, glaring at us with unmistakable hostility. I couldn't help feeling unsettled by it. When Ethan came over to congratulate me, I quietly asked him why. The evening progressed to the living room for dessert and drinks. I abstained from alcohol, and Caleb did too. We got comfortable, and the conversation naturally drifted to babies and pregnancy. I shared details about the nursery we were designing for Charlotte, feeling proud. Serafina remained quiet, barely participating. She said our room was too bright for a baby to sleep in, suggesting we hadn't addressed the practicalities. Although I patiently mentioned that we would install blackout curtains to darken the room for baby sleep, she hardly regarded my statement. She then asked why we chose yellow over a neutral color scheme. Surprised, I informed her that yellow is just a color and has nothing to do with gender. She then examined our beautifully organized baby clothes in drawers. She mocked them, saying her son had never liked them and that we should have contacted other parents before buying cheap knockoffs. She was dismissive and condescending, which startled me. Before that, I'd been courteous, anticipating she'd be frank, but this crossed a line. I lost control. What the hell are you talking about? I said, frustrated. Caleb and I had worked hard to make our baby's life perfect, so her words stunned me. She clearly didn't want to give counsel. Instead, she appeared to be purposefully undermining the evening's joy. My mother, Vivian, and mother-in-law entered the nursery as Serafina was ready to respond, beaming at the room. Their enthusiastic praise of how wonderful everything looked temporarily eased the tension. I wouldn't ignore Serafina's issue. I again asked, what exactly did you mean by that? My mother and mother-in-law noticed the tension and knew something was amiss. Mom asked what was up. Serafina had criticized the room and termed our carefully picked baby clothes cheap, so I explained. Both women looked stunned that someone would be so overtly disparaging, especially during such a precious occasion. My mother-in-law laughed and asked Serafina, "Is this true?" She seemed surprised by the sudden confrontation and tried to downplay her earlier comments. She told me the textiles were too rough and suggested softer ones, but my mother and mother-in-law didn't trust her. They shook their heads and laughed quietly, saying the clothing felt nice. Serafina soon retracted, saying that as a mother, she knew better and that I should be open to criticism. My mother spoke hard yet calmly before I could react. "Well, we're mothers too," she said. And we'd never say that to her. "You should know how hard it is being a first-time mother." My mother-in-law also helped. "This isn't appropriate behavior," Serafina said. "There's a difference between offering advice and being needlessly critical." Her face flushed as she realized she was outnumbered and wrong. She was plainly offended but said little. She had a fit and left the nursery. I followed her out to prevent an escalation. Serafina went straight to Ethan, who was still talking with the family in the living room. Without explanation, she said she was leaving immediately. Ethan looked bewildered but didn't dispute her decision, sensing her anxiety. He apologized to everyone, congratulated Caleb and me on the pregnancy again, and left with Serafina. After our announcement dinner, Ethan phoned Caleb and me to apologize for Serafina's actions. After my mother-in-law chastised him for bringing Serafina to such a private family event, he discovered everything. I immediately forgiven Ethan because I realized it wasn't his fault. He felt worried and sought to explain Serafina's wrong behavior. Ethan said Serafina suffered pregnancy trauma. At 16, Serafina fell pregnant with her son. After marriage, they tried to have more children but ran into problems. Their mental health suffered after years of infertility, which led to their divorce. Ethan says Serafina was sensitive to other women's pregnancy, which may explain her unpleasant reaction to our celebration. I understood Serafina's challenges as a woman. I understood her grief and disappointment and knew they had caused emotional wounds. Though I sympathized with her circumstances, her comments during our dinner announcement were unpleasant and inappropriate. So I decided it would be best to maintain some distance from her at future family gatherings to protect the positive atmosphere I wanted to preserve around our growing family. Ethan and Serafina continued dating, and on the day I delivered Charlotte, Ethan called and asked Caleb if he could bring Serafina to visit our newborn. Although we had reservations, Caleb and I reluctantly agreed, hoping perhaps things would be different this time. Unfortunately, this proved to be a mistake. As soon as Serafina saw our baby, she immediately commented on how little hair our newborn had, suggesting this indicated her hair would remain extremely thin as she grew up. Her words felt like a direct attack, and I could see the irritation on Caleb's face as well. This comment was another unnecessary and insensitive remark during what should have been a purely joyful moment. Ethan, sensing the tension in the room, didn't allow Serafina to stay long. After offering brief congratulations, they quickly departed. This year, Ethan shocked everyone by announcing his engagement to Serafina. The news received mixed reactions, particularly from my mother-in-law. She openly expressed disappointment with Ethan's decision to marry Serafina, having never wanted her to become part of the family. Apparently, my mother-in-law and Serafina had been clashing for months. Knowing my mother-in-law is typically warm and kind-hearted, I suspected Serafina's behavior was likely causing their ongoing tension. When Caleb called Ethan to discuss the sudden engagement, believing everything was moving too quickly, Ethan confessed that Serafina was actually 4 months pregnant. Apparently, Ethan had only discovered this 2 months earlier and had kept it secret as they feared judgment before getting married. Ethan explained that he wanted to marry Serafina before their baby arrived, which seemed reasonable given their circumstances. However, during the wedding preparations, Serafina threw a tantrum while trying on wedding gowns because she couldn't fit into any of them. She had gained weight during her pregnancy, making it difficult to wear her dream dress. Ethan attempted to convince her to choose something more comfortable, but she refused to compromise. Ultimately, she demanded that Ethan change their wedding date. Originally planned to occur before the baby's arrival, it was now postponed until a month after the baby's due date so Serafina could lose some pregnancy weight. Despite the frustration the scheduled change might have caused everyone, I understood that this was Ethan and Serafina's special day, and they deserved to choose a date that made them comfortable. A month ago, Serafina delivered her daughter, and Caleb and I had even visited the hospital to congratulate the new parents. For their upcoming wedding, Caleb was selected as Ethan's best man. We weren't comfortable leaving Charlotte behind for the entire day, so we decided to bring our daughter with us. My mother-in-law and I discussed child care arrangements and agreed we could manage looking after Charlotte between us. I initially considered hiring a hotel babysitter, but with increasing concerns about child abductions, I felt safer having a trusted family member watch Charlotte during the reception. I planned to avoid drinking and would retire early to our room anyway, ensuring Charlotte received proper care throughout the event. However, about a week before the wedding, Serafina called me. During our conversation, she asked if I would be bringing Charlotte to the wedding. I confirmed our plans and began explaining our child care arrangements for the evening. To my surprise, Serafina interrupted me and stated she didn't want Charlotte at the wedding. Shocked, I asked why. Serafina explained that she only wanted her miracle baby to be the center of attention, claiming that Charlotte's presence would divert attention away from her child. I tried reasoning that everyone had already met Charlotte, and nobody could possibly steal attention from Serafina on her wedding day, but Serafina remained adamant and grew increasingly upset. She warned that if I couldn't respect her boundaries, I wouldn't be welcome at the wedding. The situation eventually escalated into a major argument involving Serafina, Ethan, Caleb, and my mother-in-law. Ethan contacted me, apologizing for Serafina's behavior and clarifying that I was still very much invited to the wedding. He urged me not to take Serafina's words too seriously and assured me that bringing Charlotte was absolutely fine. I felt furious with Serafina and considered skipping their wedding entirely, but I knew supporting Caleb and attending his brother's wedding was important. So I decided to set aside my feelings and attend, focusing on making the best of the situation for the sake of family harmony. This brings us to the incident that occurred during Ethan and Serafina's ceremony. Several relatives couldn't resist admiring Charlotte, commenting on how adorable she looked. Serafina occasionally shot me disapproving glances whenever our eyes met. She clearly still resented me bringing Charlotte to her wedding, even though her baby unquestionably remained the star attraction, and I made zero effort to seek attention. When the celebration moved to the reception area, my mother-in-law, Caleb, and I took turns watching